she manifests confidence in God's provision. Elisha the prophet said to her, he said, what do you have in your house? Well, she said, really, I have nothing. And I think she would have been truthful if she just stopped there. To her, just think about it, a drop of oil in relationship to her needs is nothing. And then after she said nothing, then she said, wait a minute, you know, would a drop of oil count? It's just a little bit of oil in a jar, would that count? Elijah said, hey, you got a factory going here. I want to tell you something at the outset. Will you listen to me? God's intentions always to start with what you have, what He's already given you. You see, how much you have is not the issue. That's not the issue. God doesn't care about that. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hill. God wants you to start with what you already have. Do you know why? Listen to me. Because God wants to pour His blessings on His faithful children. God wants to give much to those who are faithful with little. God wants to give overabundance to those who are willing to give Him everything. God longs to bless the cheerful giver. And so Elisha, he said to her, what do you have in your house? Now, beloved, listen. If you want to experience God's blessing, if you really want to see God answer prayer in abundance, if you really want to see God, and if you want to test God's faithfulness, if you want to see great and mighty things from His hand, begin with the tithe. That's where you begin. Begin with the tithe. If you are not tithing according to Malachi 3, you're stealing from God. I didn't say it. God did. God said, if you want to see the windows of heaven open and you get blessed out of your socks, that's a rough translation, but you know what I mean. Start with the tithe. What do you have in your house? He said, what do you have in your house? Last week in Geelong, in Melbourne, Australia, we had a radio rally. And there were hundreds of people there, just unheard of in Australia. They don't have radio, Christian radio like we do here. If you get one in a major city, that's a big time. And this radio station actually broadcast leading the way 3 times a day. People were lining up for a long time. 4 Filipino immigrants who get in the car together every day. And they've been listening to the radio program, and they all became Christians together. They drove 2 hours to come tell me their story. They're a famous football player, and on, go on and on and on. But until the day I die, I'll never forget a little boy named David, 10 years old, has an angelic face. And he walked up to me, he stood in the line, and shyly pushed 10 Australian dollars in my hand. So I kind of knelt on one knee so I can look him in the eye. And I said, David, I said, what is this? He said, well, I asked my mom to give you my next month's allowance so you can preach Jesus to the world. I held this $10 in my hand. I want to tell you it's the most precious $10 I've ever received. I said to him, David, I want to tell you something. I'm going to be praying that God will use your month's allowance to change many lives around the world. But I'll tell you something else. I'm going to be praying for you that this sacrifice be accepted in heaven, and that you would grow up to be a mighty man of God like David in the Bible.